Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. It's great to see you again. Today, I want to walk you through one of my most used pieces in the gym, and that is the Bells of Steel Lat Pulldown and Low Row. I've had this piece for about 6 months now, and it gets regular use from me multiple times a week. Depending on training goals, Lat Pulldown Low Row is one of my top recommendations for a home gym owner after you've got the basics covered, right? That's a rack, a bench, plates, and a bar. These machines are relatively space-friendly and versatile beyond just pull-downs and rows. And depending whether you go plate-loaded or selectorized, they can fit a variety of budgets. This specific machine from Bells of Steel has some solid features and a few key differences compared to others in its class. Let me show you around. My favorite thing about this machine is that it has a selectorized weight stack, and a big one at that. Although most of us won't be maxing this bad boy out on pull downs, it does go up to 310 pounds, which is more than most. For example, the Titan Fitness Lat Tower maxes out at 300 pounds, while some others can top out at 250 pounds or less. With a starting weight of 10 pounds, the stack offers 10-pound increments, which is fairly standard and good for progressive overload. However, there are two additional ways to influence resistance on this machine. The first is that Bells of Steel includes a loading pin to replace the tethered selector. And with that, you can load plates directly onto it for micro adjustments or for even exceeding the weight stack. And with a 550-pound total weight capacity, this machine is plenty for virtually everyone. However, there are a few things to consider with this pin. First is that it may cause slight misalignment with the stack pin when working at lighter weights, causing it to clip the top plate on the way back down. It's not enough to prevent motion, but it is distracting and results in a less smooth experience. Again, I've only noticed it on lighter weights. With 60 pounds or heavier, it doesn't occur. Second, the quality just isn't very good. It feels a bit cheap and flimsy, which is probably why Bells claims up to 20 pounds of additional resistance. If you want to load heavier weights or you just want a better loading pin in general, I recommend the Gem pin, which I've been using for several years. Thirdly, these top band pegs will prevent you from using change plates on any weight pin for anything under 50 pounds. Probably not something that most of us are going to have to deal with, but if you are training at lighter weights, you may need to get creative or use fractional plates like these from Microgains. And lastly, you may have to contend with the standard tethered selector. This is a magnetic pin, which makes it easy and secure, but there's not a hole in the top plate. You can put it in the 20 pounds just fine, but that may interfere with loading additional weights. Then again, you can always just put it on the top since it is magnetic, and it does a pretty good job staying there, and that's normally what I do, but I think that it would be a wise move for Bells to include a hole in that 10-pound plate. The second way to influence resistance is with bands. This machine includes band pegs on both sides of the stack for accommodating resistance. I've personally never really felt the need to use bands on pull downs or low rows, but it's a nice option nonetheless, and it's one that several other machines offer as well. An important spec to consider on any cable machine is the weight ratio, which is determined by the pulley configuration, right? A 310-pound stack is great if you have an effective ratio to realize its full potential. A dedicated lat pull low row like this should have a 1-to-1 ratio, which means you're effectively lifting 100% of whatever you select in the stack. This machine has that. Compare that to a functional trainer, which commonly has a 2-to-1 ratio, meaning you're effectively lifting 50% of the weight. So if you're performing makeshift pull downs on something like a functional trainer, then moving over to a dedicated machine is going to have a meaningful difference. Speaking of pulleys and cables, let's take a closer look at both. This machine uses aluminum pulleys, which is a more premium option compared to plastic or nylon. Aluminum is lightweight and very durable, making it a great option for a cable machine. However, aluminum can also create a little bit more friction on the cable itself, causing it to potentially break down a little bit faster. Now, that's probably not something that most home gym owners are going to have to deal with compared to a commercial gym where you're getting thousands and thousands of reps, but there are a couple of things to consider. First, I recommend having a can of 100% silicone lubricant on hand. These only cost a few dollars from Amazon or your local hardware store, and they're ideal for maintaining healthy and smooth cable parts. I recommend applying it to the guide rods, the pulley, and directly to the cable every few months, depending on how often you use the machine. I also recommend applying it anytime you're building a cable machine to ensure optimal performance. The second thing to consider is the quality of the cable itself. In general, thicker cables are more durable and they lead to a higher weight capacity. Remember, this machine has a 310-pound stack, but a 550-pound weight capacity. Some high-end cable machines will have as much as a 1/4 inch thick diameter cable. This one isn't quite 1/4 inch, but it's close and it is thicker than most. Overall, I've been quite pleased with how smooth this machine feels, and I found it comparable to even some more expensive options. Okay, we've talked about the stack, the ratio, the cables, and the pulleys. Let's take a look at some of the dimensions and overall build quality. One of the most important things to consider on a lat pull down is the height, and that's important for two primary reasons. First, do you have the ceiling clearance for the machine? If you're in a basement or maybe you're looking to add this underneath a garage rail, you may be limited in the machines that you can buy. The second is how much range of motion you can achieve. Tall lifters need taller machines to get a full stretch on a lat pull down. This machine is almost 87 inches tall, which is actually pretty good and strikes a nice balance between range of motion and ceiling clearance. Now, I'm only 5'8", so I'm golden here either way, but even if I add several inches, you can see where I'm getting a full range of motion when I'm attached to that top carabiner. That said, attaching to the very top isn't suitable for shorter lifters like me because to get a full contraction, the stack would hit the top of the machine, preventing you from ever getting there. To resolve that, Bells of Steel provides this chain to bridge the two, allowing tall lifters to get a full stretch at the top and short lifters to get a full contraction at the bottom. This chain is also important when performing different exercises. I mentioned before that you can do things other than pull downs and rows. For example, triceps push downs, straight arm pull downs, cable curls, and more. This chain gives you a little bit more flexibility. You can dial in your range of motion and not have some of those issues that I just mentioned. Along with that, Bells moved this seat further forward so you can stand closer to the machine when using the low pulley. This way you don't have to stand further back, sacrificing cable arc for the sake of clearance and range of motion. It also makes pure upright movements more accessible. Speaking of the seat, I have some mixed feelings. It's comfortable enough, but the vinyl is just okay. The same goes for the leg attachment. I appreciate that it has 7 different height adjustments for different user heights, but again, the pad is just okay. The vinyl is a little bit loose fitting, which may lead to some issues down the road. But then again, if you're only using this thing a few times a week, it's probably not going to be something that you have to deal with long term. Something else to consider is that this leg attachment sits pretty loosely in the tube. You can tighten it down pretty well with this pin, but as you can see, that top section still tends to move around a little bit. Once you have pressure on it with your legs, though, it's really not that big of a deal, but I would like to see a little bit more rigidity there. I'm happy with the size of the low row foot attachment. Less expensive plate-loaded machines often have smaller individual foot plates, but this thick plate measures nearly 17 inches wide by 9 inches tall for better foot positioning. It also adjusts front to back in 15 different positions depending on user height and preferred range of motion. Let me show you a few other features with this pull down. First, you've got side holes in these uprights. Now, that's not a revolutionary concept. Other machines also include this, but it's nice to have if you intend to attach things to it. For example, you can mount dip stations or storage hooks for extra versatility. Keep in mind though, Bells of Steel uses a 2.3 by 2.3 sized upright, which is unique to them. Structurally, it's rock solid, but you will be limited to their attachments unless you go custom. So I'd love to see Bells of Steel implement a more conventional tube size like 3x3 so you can have some better cross compatibility with other companies and their attachments. They also have holes in the rear support, which actually is unique. Here you can attach things like landmines for even more versatility. It's not something that I use personally, but I do think it was a smart decision to maximize usable space in what is probably a no or low cost addition. You'll also see holes in the base for mounting this to your floor. With such a big weight stack though, I don't really think that that's necessary. Trust me, I get it from a liability perspective. And please don't take this as an absolute, you don't have to mount this. I just chose not to. And at 43 inches wide and nearly 70 inches long, I haven't seen anything to indicate that this thing is at risk of tipping. Assembling this machine was somewhat challenging. I did it myself in about 2 hours, but anytime you're dealing with cables, it makes it a little bit more difficult. I'd say the hardest part was routing the low row cable through this shielded section. Now, the instructions that Bells of Steel provides are quite frankly terrible. It's essentially a one-pager with an exploded diagram, and they tell you to figure it out. Not the easiest thing to work with. I would definitely recommend checking out their YouTube video, which shows the assembly process. Aesthetically, this is a fairly standard matte black powder-coated machine. I don't love all the bolts that you can see, and I do wish they were black to blend in better, but it's not too offensive. One thing I did was apply a custom overlay to my weight stack. I did that through a company called Plate Snacks, which I highly recommend. You can upload any art you want to. Tell them what machine you're using. They'll print out a high quality vinyl sticker page, and then you can self-install that. It's very easy, and I think it transforms the look over the generic sticker pack that comes with the machine. Last thing I want to touch on is this pull-down bar that's included with the machine. This is a stainless steel bar with a 25mm diameter and a fairly aggressive knurling. It's actually pretty good, and I appreciate that Bells of Steel includes it, but it's not my favorite. And if you're gonna be using this machine a lot, I at least encourage you to consider upgrading attachments. I like Prime Fitness the most, but there's lots of options out there. Now, Bells does not include a low row attachment, so you'll need to invest in one if you want a narrower, neutral grip commonly used for that movement. Overall, this is a very good lat pull down and low row machine, especially if you're looking for a selectorized version without spending several $1,000s. It has a big stack, smooth performance, and solid dimensions for a wide range of motion. Now, it does still cost $2,000, so you'll have to ask yourself if you want selectorized or plate loaded. Personally, if it fits the budget, I'd recommend selectorized all the way for the convenience and really overall performance. In my experience, stack machines like this feel better, they're smoother, and they naturally feel more stable. You may be comparing this unit to the popular Titan Fitness lat tower, and that's another popular option for a selectorized piece. However, the Titan version does have a slightly lower stack weight of only 300 pounds, and the warranty is not as strong at 1 year compared to the limited lifetime warranty that you get with this one. At the moment, both of these machines are priced the same, so any sales aside, I think that the Bells of Steel is the better buy between the two. So what do you guys think of this lat pull and low row? Do you prefer selectorized, or is plate loaded enough for a home gym? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Until then, be well, and we'll chat soon.